have to keep in mind 1692, Salem, where you've got obviously the witch trials, okay? And we don't really know what started the witch trials. I mean, y'all watched that documentary the other day, and it talks about little girls that started all the rumors. I can't remember though, I watched that thing once and I thought it was really good, but did it at all talk about some of the possible scientific reasons behind it? Did it talk about the wheat crop that year and that they think that there might have been a fungus that was growing in the wheat crop that could have caused hallucinations? I can tell by your faces, they did not mention that at all, right? So there are all these speculations as to why this happened, because it's so hard for us as 21st century readers to understand these people who were otherwise pretty rational, who completely and utterly believed that the devil and witches roamed the earth. Okay? Maybe it was that the girls were just bored. Maybe it was all a game. They had gone to listen to stories from this slave named Tituba, who was from Barbados, who would talk about like her background in Barbados and her religion, which was not Christian, right? And the stories there, and they were captivated by it. And to them, maybe it was a game that got out of hand. Maybe these are little children who were not given any attention up to this point. And all of a sudden, when they start calling names of people they say are witches, people are listening to them, you know, and not only giving them attention, but praising them. And bonus, they didn't have to work so hard for the time during the witch trials, right? It was entertaining and it got them out of the drudgery of life. So maybe that's it. At some point though, I think that these girls started to believe their own lies, because there truly is a sense of hysteria. And hysteria is something that doesn't have rationality behind it, right? It's based in like fear, but also excitement. And it's said that in the trials, these girls would convulse and fall to the floor and speak in tongues. And it's like, they couldn't have all been just fantastic actresses, right? So I turned it in. Thanks. So I think at some point they truly believed their own stories, especially when you had like really accomplished and respected authority figures that were believing them. You also have to remember, these are incredibly religious people, the Puritans. With the religion, though, comes this great superstition. They believed in the literal interpretation of the Bible, and the Bible says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Okay? Bible also talks about demons and spirits. And so, if you believed in the Bible, it wasn't much of a stretch to believe that these bad elements could infiltrate your village. And when that happens, you got to root them out. That is the setting of the crucible, okay? By the way, write this down. Crucible is defined as a severe test. Just give it a second, okay? Crucible is defined as a severe test. So the characters in the crucible that we're going to see are going to undergo a severe test of character, okay? Because Alelia, did I say that right? Aaliyah, well, I was fairly close. Okay, Aaliyah, if you were accused of witchcraft, early on, it probably would have been because you did something that people didn't agree with, or maybe you were just kind of the odd man out. They thought you were strange. You didn't quite fit in, because the early witches were or so-called witches were those that were kind of like outcast, right? But if you were accused of witchcraft, you had two choices. You could confess, and your life would be spared. because your confession showed you wanting to come to God, right? Or you can maintain your innocence, because let's face it, I mean, were the folks actually witches? No, right? You can maintain your innocence. In fact, Martha Corey said, I know not what a witch is. One of the persons on trial. We have the documents from the trial. She said, I know not what a witch is. And they said, then how do you know you're not one? Okay? So you could maintain your innocence, and they would see that as this stubborn, what? This stubborn desire to hold on to the devil, the dark, and you would be rooted out, in other words, executed. So what ends up happening is you got, you know, many scores of people, score means 20, by the way, who confess. And why not? I mean, honestly, if I'm living in 1692 Salem, first of all, they probably would have accused me of witchcraft because I am weird. Secondly, I'd probably confess to save my life. I'd like to think that I would maintain my honor and like say, no, you're wrong. I'm not a witch. I'm a godly woman. But I don't know if I'd have the courage. Most people didn't. So there are in total, I want to say like 20 people who are killed. 19 were hanged. One was pressed to death. I think in the video they called it crushed. Okay? And then they killed a dog. And you know, of course, I'm the one that feels, I'm like, oh, not the dog, right? So it's for us to look back on, it just seems so ridiculous. That's the first setting you got to keep in mind. The second setting deals with what you read at the bottom of that page. So Arthur Miller writes The Crucible, but everybody, and it was a hit too, everybody who watches The Crucible when it comes out in the 1950s, they see that he's really talking about the condition of America in the 1950s. Because there is a witch hunt of sorts happening in the 1950s. In fact, you know, today the term witch hunt is used all the time, and it doesn't mean they're looking for actual witches. It means that you've ganged up on a group of people and you've made them the scapegoat, and it's based in fear, right? So you're looking for like the boogeyman. It's a witch hunt, okay? In the 1950s, the hunt for witches wasn't witches, it was the hunt for communists. And it was called the Red Scare because, of course, the USSR, the big flag is red, right? And you had a man, and you do want to jot his name down. His name was Joseph McCarthy. That's why the Red Scare is also called McCarthyism, okay? Joseph McCarthy was a senator who led the charge. He spread rumors that communists had infiltrated the government. He was put in charge of a Senate committee to root this out, to interrogate people, to ask folks questions and find more communists. And he really did it as a power play. He played on people's fears, and he loved the attention and power. In fact, these committee hearings, these meetings were televised. And back then, y'all, you only had like 3 channels. So most people were watching these hearings televised, okay? So Arthur Miller had gone to a Communist Party meeting. Funny story, he did it because he was dating a girl that had communist sympathy. So he probably just showed up because he was trying to impress a girl, right? And he'd done that, I want to say, back in the 1930s. Well, here it is like 20 years later, and he's called before this committee of senators questioning him because he attended a meeting like 20 years prior. And he admitted to attending the meeting, but when they started asking him, well, who else was there? Who else do you know that has any kind of sympathies to the communists? He refuses to name names, which gets him in trouble, but he refuses to like turn on other people. And that's the deal. In the witch trials, if you were accused of witchcraft, once they established that you were a witch, if you confessed, they were going to next ask you, well, who else was with you in the forest cavorting with Satan? And you would start naming other names because you had all that pressure to do so. Okay? All right, let's start the book. Get your book out. We don't have a lot of time, but we're going to get a start on it, okay? So go to where the characters start talking. Do you mind continuing? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
All right. Go to where the characters start talking. And there's a lot of background in this play, y'all, but some of it you can skim, quite honestly. It's got a lot of historical context and such, but a lot of it I've just kind of gone over it with you. But it's set, the first scene that is set in Reverend Parris's home, okay? His daughter and his niece have been caught dancing in the forest. First off, Puritans aren't supposed to dance. So there's that. Secondly, Puritans feared the forest. Not only because the Indians lived in the forest, but because the forest is like nature, wild, and untamed. And the Puritans were about taming those base instincts, right? Living a morally upright life. So quite literally, there was this, this phrase that said something like, the forest is the devil's playground. So you didn't go into the forest, especially at night, especially to dance, okay? All right, so his daughter, who's about 10, and his niece, who is our villain, by the way, is 17, and they were caught dancing in the forest, okay? All right, so I'm looking for my folks that have books. Morgan, read for Tituba, and Alina, you don't have yours today? Okay. Let's see. Kayvon, you're going to have to assume your best girly voice and read for Abigail, okay? And I tell you what, you read for Tituba, you read for Abigail, that would go better, and I'll read for Paris, okay? And then, John, you got your book with you? No. Oh, well, Morgan, you already have a part. Oh, wait, Craig, you can read for Susanna, okay? In my book, it's page 8. It's where they first start talking, okay? By the way, you need to understand, these are historical people. I mean, these people lived. There are court documents that tell us what these people said in court. They are not just fictional characters in a play. They're real people who lived their lives back in the 1690s in Salem. Arthur Miller has fictionalized them. In other words, he's made things more dramatic, okay? All right, Tituba comes in and says,
"My Betty be haughty soon."
Out of here.
Oh, my Betty not going to die.
Out of my sight, out of mine. And then he starts saying things like, my Betty, wake up, will you wake up? His daughter, who's 10, who was caught dancing in the woods at night, has probably fallen into this kind of stupor because she's afraid. She's afraid of the punishment that she's going to get, right? So she's in like a catatonic state. She cannot be awakened. And he is freaked out by this, okay? All right, he's bending to kneel again when Abigail Williams comes in. Now, if you got a highlighter, highlight what it says about Abigail Williams, okay? And you guys who don't have your book, make a mental note because this is important. Dang it! Okay, well, you've got to read